A 13-year-old stumbles into a sexual online chat room.
What is this? I don't understand. So there's an intrigue part of it.
And her intrigue becomes a full-fledged addiction.
There is an escape, and I can go on there and pretend that none of my life is actually happening.
Find out what it took to set her free. Plus, Grammy Award-winning music legend Charlie Daniels joins us to talk about God's grace on today's 700 Club Interactive. Well, welcome to the show. A Michigan farmer and his family received some good news. Just last week, a federal judge ruled that the Country Mill Farms is allowed to return to the East Lansing Farmers Market, despite their ban late last year. Back in August, East Lansing officials excluded Country Mill Farms owner Steve Tenz from selling his organic apples because of a Facebook post. And in that post, he stated his personal belief that marriage, based on the Bible, is between a man and a woman. Steve never declined to serve anyone at the market, nor did he break any laws. Well, Country Mill Farm is now able to participate in one of their largest annual events, the Michigan Apple Festival, and that takes place this weekend. And what a wonderful thing. I mean, we need to recognize in America, we all enjoy free speech, and we have the free right of exercising that speech, and we shouldn't be excluded because of our beliefs. We all have freedom of conscience, and what a wonderful thing to recognize that we live in a free land, and what a wonderful thing. Well, millions of Syrians are still displaced from years of civil war. Here's a positive story of a Syrian refugee family. 18 months ago, the Haddad family's chocolate factory in Syria was destroyed by a bomb. After nearly a year in a Lebanese refugee camp, the family of 9 moved to Nova Scotia with nothing but the clothes on their backs. Well, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau mentioned the family at last September's United Nations Summit on Refugees, and now business is booming. The family credits the Prime Minister in the welcoming people of their new home.
Years since we came here to this country from nothing.
It's wonderful. We're just so happy to have them here and so happy that they have succeeded, that they're really an example for a whole lot of people.
I think it's wonderful that they are now providing jobs for local people, that they've come here and now are giving jobs. It's wonderful.
Well, demand for the chocolate reportedly multiplied sixfold, allowing the family to sell their Peace by chocolate through the power of the internet across Canada and the entire world. Well, police in Coatesville, Pennsylvania are handing out tickets. However, these tickets are not for breaking the law. They're for kids who are doing the right thing. Sergeant Kirk Geyer says it's a great way for kids to have a positive interaction with the police.
Hey, I heard some great things about you. So I caught you doing something right, and I'm going to give you a ticket. Work really hard. And that is going to make you a success. Deal? Well done, young man. What people do when they don't know others are watching shows their character the most.
Well, the tickets are worth $10 and can be placed into a kids' club savings account with the Coatesville Savings Bank. The bank's partnership with the police department has set aside $1,000 for the initiative, and I hope this gets duplicated. What a wonderful thing. So often communities and the police, it's almost like they think they're at war with each other. And what a great way to break down those barriers. Well, from encouraging young people to encouraging a man in his final days, take a look. His smile says it all. Up next, he's an award-winning Country Music Hall of Famer. His 60-year career has had some highs and some lows. Music legend Charlie Daniels joins us in the studio to talk about it. Don't go away. Well, few musical artists can boast the kind of career longevity Charlie Daniels has experienced. After 60 years, his evident passion for music and love for God has been his recipe for success.
Charlie Daniels' career spans 60 years, which includes selling more than 20 million albums and winning a Grammy for his signature song, The Devil Went Down to Georgia. He's performed over 100 concerts in every state and in dozens of foreign countries. Last year, Charlie was inducted into the Country Music Hall of Fame. Charlie puts down the fiddle and takes up a pen. He shares about life from the early days to his rise to music stardom in his book, Never Look at the Empty Seats.
Well, the living legend, Charlie Daniels, it's an honor to have you with us.
Gordon, it's always a pleasure. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, you come out with a book, Never Look at the Empty Seats, and it's a memoir of your life. And there's some things in here I didn't know. I didn't know that you grew up farmer in North Carolina.
My background, my folks, both sides of my family come with farmers and timber people. My dad was a timber man. He knew more about a pine tree than anybody I ever saw. Wow. He could look at a pine tree and tell you how many board feet of timber were in it, and what kind of pole or piling it would make. When he was as compassionate about that as I am about my music, or as passionate about that as I am about my music.
So how'd you get started?
I went up to a friend of mine's house one day. I'd known him for years, and he had an old guitar. Where he got it, how long he had it, I had no idea. It was a terrible old big Stella with a neck about the size of half a fence post, and the strings were rusty and way up off the neck. But he knew about literally 2.5 chords. He could play G and C, and if he stopped and put his fingers right, he could play another chord. Anyway, I said, you got to teach me that. Here, my best friend, I had no idea, knew anything at all about a guitar, and I'd always wanted to learn how. So it started that day, right then. I said, you got to teach me those. And I worked on learning those 3 chords, and him and me started hanging around anybody that could, play any instrument at all, especially guitars. That's what we started with. And just kept picking up chords and playing, and got together with some other guys that didn't want to do the same thing, that played different instruments, put a little band together. That's been, gosh, 50, well, no, it's been 70, not 70, but 60, about 65 years ago.
Wow.
I started doing
One of the things I didn't know is that you never took a lesson in how to play the fiddle, and at the same time, you're world famous. That's your song, and you're recognized for that.
Well, one of the reasons that I have the sound that I have is because I never learned to play. I never had a lesson on how to hold the fiddle, how to hold the bow. I hold the fiddle wrong. I hold the bow wrong. I put too much pressure on the bow, which it creates a sound most people don't want, but it works for me. I have kids ask me sometime about playing the fiddle. I said, don't look at me, because I do it all wrong. I hold it. It works for me, but it probably won't work for you. Look at some of these guys that do it right, to hold the violin like it's supposed to be held. And of course, I'd be too old to change now if I wanted to, but I really don't want to. It works for me. The sound works for me.
So how did you learn just playing by ear? You just
I just wanted to bad enough, Gordon. I am not a natural musician. I've always had to work a little.
You are.
Well,
you can do it by ear.
A lot of people think that, and I wish I was. But when I say natural musician, I hear things, but achieving any proficiency on it, it took me a long time to learn those first 3 chords. And nowadays, I got some guys in my band to just pick things up just like that. If we do a new song, it takes me a little bit longer to get my part together than it does these guys. That's what I'm speaking of, is not being a natural musician.
Well, you're a natural songwriter.
I think that's kind of a natural part, but that's also like a muscle. I think it's something that the more you
got
use
to
it,
exercise. Well, anything in life, if you've got a natural talent for it and you don't use it and you don't develop it, then. But what got you writing songs? I
was very fortunate. In 1959, I made the first trip I ever made to California. I was just a kid. We're going out there to play. And I stopped in Fort Worth, Texas, to see a friend of mine that I had met in North Carolina, and he introduced me to a guy named Bob Johnston. And he was trying to make it in the music business. and which he finally did in a big way. But I started writing songs with him, and we just kind of hit it off. But he was much more accomplished than I was. He was much more.
The book to him.
Yeah, he was much more demanding than I was, and he just really, when we would write together, he would insist that we get every word like it's supposed to be, every note of music like it was supposed to be. So that gave me a work ethic and attitude toward my writing that I would not turn loose of something until I was happy with it. I have kept bits and pieces of songs in my mind for as long as 14 years. Wow. You know, just keeping it there until it finally fits. It's like a square peg. You got to find a square hole to put it in. But if you keep it long enough, it's good. You'll find a place to put it.
Well, it didn't take you long. If you say you started writing songs in 1959, in just a couple of years, Elvis Presley, the #1, the king, is singing your songs.
Well, that was a song I wrote with Bob Johnston. Bob and myself wrote that, and we wrote it in 1962, and Elvis recorded it in 1963. And it was by far the biggest thing that had ever happened to me at that time. Elvis Presley was the biggest artist in the world. And
I mean, well, just he's still king. I mean, what happened to you? I mean, was there a hat big enough for your head?
I was so flabbergasted by the whole thing that, you know, the way it did me was I wanted to go back and write more songs, you know. Oh. I wanted more of that.
You wanted?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. But I've always, things like that happened to me encouraged me to work a little harder, to dig a little deeper, and that sort of thing. But at that time, doing that song, having Elvis recorded, is one of the biggest things that ever happened to me. He gave me such a shot in the arm. And then playing on 3 Bob Dylan albums in the early 60s and early 70s.
And those are 3 legendary.
Yeah.
I mean, some consider them his best.
Yeah, well, Nashville Skyline to me is a totally different album for Bob Dylan. I think it's kind of a, you know, he's constantly reinventing himself, it seemed like. And that was one of the times when the invention was just pretty doggone incredible. But that was a big step up. But he was always kind enough to put the studio musicians' names on his albums. And he's a kind of artist that people wanted to know about. So they'd literally read the liner notes. Yeah. And to have your name on a Bob Dylan album gave you a kind of a legitimacy with a lot of people. You know, people say, well, hey, he must play pretty good, play with Dylan. It opened a lot of doors for me.
Did he teach anything about songwriting?
No, not really. He just came in and he'd sing his songs. We'd all stand there with our mouth open and try to learn them. You know, wow, listen to him. And he had, you know, I've compared him with William Shakespeare, and I mean, 2 totally different things, but they both had a very unique way of putting the English language together. And I don't think anybody's been more in a down-to-earth sort of way ever put the English language together quite like Bob Dylan did. Now, I don't know what he was talking about half the time. I'm not sure he did. I don't know, but it sure did. It sure worked out well.
It all seemed to go together.
Yeah, it did.
For you, you know, those are obviously big breaks, and I think for any musician to say, you know, I played on a Bob Dylan album, you can kind of say, okay, well, you can, you know, you've achieved a pinnacle, but you went on from that.
Well, I wanted to, I went to Nashville thinking I would be a studio musician, a record producer, and that sort of thing, kind of behind the scenes. But I come to find out, I've done this a couple of times in my life. That's not what I wanted. My place is on stage. There's no doubt in my mind about it. That's where I love to be, what I'm best at. I've devoted my life to learning how to entertain. And there's nothing I like better than getting on stage and entertaining people.
I've got to ask this. You were on stage in Jerusalem. And one of the things I learned in the book was you learned how to play Hatikva.
Yes.
The national anthem of Israel, Hatikva, which means the hope.
Yeah.
It was the song of Zionism in the 1890s. It was the song that sustained them in the concentration camps in Germany and then became the national anthem. And here you, a country player, are playing. What was their reaction to that?
I went there I'd gone with my church, and it was during the Feast of Tabernacles, and the Christian Embassy Jerusalem, am I saying it right? They had programs every night. This particular night, there was a night that the Jewish people came. There was a night that all the local people came in Jerusalem. And my pastor said, would you do a song with the band? And so, yeah, we sent some music down, and I didn't write it, somebody else did. But anyway, went and rehearsed a song called I'll Fly Away with the band. And I said, tonight when we come on, I want to do something on my fiddle by myself. And when I get through with it, I'm just going to step up and do it. And then when I get through with it, I'll step back and we'll do the song. So we walked out, everything kind of quieted down. I started playing Hatikva. And it's like all these people, all these Jewish people are out there. And here's this hillbilly from Tennessee standing on stage playing their national anthem. It was a really nice moment, Gordon. It was well worth the effort it took me to learn to play it. And it did touch some people, I could tell.
I think it touched you too.
They have a very, very strong feeling about that song and about anything Jewish. I love the Jewish people.
That one and Jerusalem of Gold. You play those and they start crying. Well, we're out of time. I wanted to talk about you mentoring people. I think that's another untold story.
We'll just have to do it again, I guess.
Charlie Daniels. We're going to have you back. But if you want to find out more, I encourage you to get the book, Never Look at the Empty Seats. You can find it beginning October 24th, wherever books are sold. And Charlie, honor to have you.
My friend. Thank you, brother.
Well, coming up, she was 13 and doing some research for school when she saw something that started a life-changing downward spiral.
And it just drew me further and further into the world of pornography.
Find out how far she fell when we return. Jessica Harris was only 13 years old when she began watching pornography online. By the time she was a high school senior, Jessica was spending 6 hours a day, that's every day, addicted to porn. She knew she needed help, but shame kept her from asking for it, until the day she finally found a way of escape.
I didn't matter. That it didn't matter that I was hurting, that it didn't matter that I was struggling. What mattered was the product, in a way. What mattered was the performance.
Jessica Harris spent her childhood trying to live up to others' expectations, especially her parents.
If I failed, if I didn't accomplish the goal or reach the standard, there was a lot of disappointment. So next time you need to try harder. This is unacceptable.
At church, she got the same impression about God.
I always felt like God just had these expectations for me, and that the Bible was a list of rules, and God was just a list of rules, and that is how you earned His love, and that is how you earned His favor. And you mess up, you lose it. It's kind of how I loved people. How can I make you proud of me? How do I make God happy? How do I make my family happy? How do I make my dad happy?
When Jessica was 7, her father walked out with no warning.
I really felt like it was something that I had done. I had made him upset, I had disappointed him, and he doesn't love me. My family was kind of like, let's just move on, pretend that never happened. And then I'm just frustrated living up to all these expectations and feeling like I'm not good enough and wondering why I'm not good enough. Just a very, very bitter and angry child and teenager. Just kind of bottled it all in and just felt empty and like I didn't matter. It led to a very empty and kind of joyless life for me.
At 13, while she was online doing research for school, an illicit video popped up. When she tried to close it, it took her to a porn website. She couldn't look away.
I think I watched the video because it's a bit like watching a train wreck. As much as you might not want to watch it, at the same time, what happens next? What is this? I don't understand. So there's an intrigue part of it.
Then something else piqued her curiosity. It was a chat room, and she signed in.
I went in there thinking, oh, I'll just talk to these people and just see what this is all about. And it turned into men asking me to perform different things for them just via chat. And I began cybering, which is having chat room sexual relations with people. Then I have no clue what they're talking about, so I'd have to go and research what that was using search engines and things, and it just drew me further and further into the world of pornography.
At first, it was the attention and adoration of those strangers that drew Jessica back again and again. Here, she was always wanted.
There is an escape, and I can go on there and pretend that none of my life is actually happening. I can go on there and pretend that my life is perfect, that I'm perfect, that I have it all together, and get acceptance and validation.
Then it became more.
And then eventually I was just so physically drawn to pornography. Forget the chat rooms, I'll just watch pornography myself. It was kind of a release for me.
By her senior year, she was spending up to 6 hours a day online, all the while still going to church and being the model student.
Now it's taken over my life. Now it's threatening to ruin my grades. It's threatening to ruin my dreams. And I'm more ashamed of the fact that I let it get this far.
Deep down, she knew she needed help, but to her, it wasn't an option.
I'm so busy in school, in church, at home, making sure everyone knows that I'm perfect and making sure I meet all the rules. Who am I going to tell? Because whoever I tell, all of that perfection is going to come crashing down, and they're going to know I'm going to be the freak who watches porn. There's no one safe to tell. I have to do this myself.
She tried to limit her time online, but couldn't. It only made her feel like more of a failure.
I would begin to just beat myself up. I would take my head and bang it against the side of the bathtub because I thought if I can make this hurt, I'll stop.
But nothing worked. She became valedictorian, but at her graduation, she realized how meaningless her life had become.
I had this revelation of my whole life is pornography. And that terrified me. And I thought, no, there has to be something else.
After Jessica began college, she attended the funeral of a girl she knew from school. She was moved by the eulogy that spoke of her friend's love for Christ.
And I remember sitting there thinking, that's what I want. I have given everything to try to make people happy and to try to impress people. And I could feel that if I died, no one would care. And I thought, that's not what I want. Like, I want my life to matter. I want it to make a difference. And if all it takes is loving Jesus, I can do that.
Afterwards, Jessica knelt at the altar and prayed.
If you can make something out of this mess, you can do something with this. It's yours. Like, you can rewrite it from here.
Still, she struggled with porn. Then at a college women's Bible study, Jessica and the others were encouraged to write down any sin they needed help overcoming.
And it was like God said, listen, you've been waiting for a safe place to confess. And all you have to do is write in your name and that you struggle with pornography. So I wrote it out, and I remember thinking it was the biggest mistake in my life. Like, I walked away feeling so defeated because I had just torn down that wall of perfection.
But it didn't end the way Jessica feared. A woman from the Bible study reached out and supported her. Through prayer and several months of counseling, Jessica overcame her addiction. Today, she's an author and speaker, helping other women find their true worth in Christ.
And with God, it was just like there was hope that my life had value and worth in and of itself, not based on what I could do or based on my brain or based on my body, but just because He had given it.
Just because of you. Jesus came just because of you. You're made in His image. You are His child. And what parent wouldn't do anything to save their child? Well, our Heavenly Father would do anything to save you because He loves you that much. Now, He's not holding you up to some standard. You don't have to perform to get His love. And that's not the way this works. It's unconditional love. And in that love, He wants the best for you. The wonderful news, He loves you so much. He doesn't want you left trapped in anything, anywhere. He wants you to be free, to have life and have it more abundantly. He doesn't want you a slave to pornography. He doesn't want you a slave to your desires. He doesn't want you a slave to alcohol, drugs, anything like that. He wants you to have life, and He wants it to be fulfilling and satisfy the desires of your heart, to give you a hope and a future. That's what He wants. Now, if you want to start this journey, here's what you do. Pick up the phone and call us, 1-800-700-7000, and just say, I need to find Jesus. I need to be set free from things. Confession is good for the soul, and you can do it. We're not here to judge you. We're here to help you. So call us. Here's a word. Let us therefore come boldly to the throne of grace that we may obtain mercy and find grace.